Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, the House of Commons is debating right now Boris Johnson's proposal to have a general election on the 12th of December. And, of course, he's doing that on the basis of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, which means he's going to need 434 votes, two-thirds of members voting, to get his general election on that date. This, of course, all against the background that an extension that was expected has been offered by the European Union to the 31st of January, though they call it a flex extension, which means we could, if we agree to what was signed up to in Brussels a couple of weeks ago, leave earlier. No sign, I don't think, of an apology from Boris Johnson about that, unless I'm missing something. Joining me is Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Theo, is it now completely accepted that we're not leaving on Thursday?
It is completely accepted, Nigel, that we are not leaving on Thursday, but the Prime Minister's spokesman was bullish this morning that the Prime Minister would not be apologising despite his do-or-die promise that we would be leaving the European Union on Thursday. The calculation inside number 10 is that Boris Johnson has shown the British public he has done everything that he could possibly do to ensure that we would leave the European Union on October the 31st. And it is Parliament which has stopped our exit from the European Union. This is what Mr. Johnson had to say at the dispatch box.
There is a widespread view that this Parliament has run its course. And that is because I simply do not believe that this House is capable of delivering on the priorities of the people, whether that means Brexit or anything else. And of course, I would rather get Brexit done, Mr. Speaker. I would rather get Brexit done first. And I share the blazing urgency of many colleagues across the House. And indeed, last Tuesday, we briefly allowed hope to bloom in our hearts, Mr. Speaker, when for the first time in 3.5 years, Parliament voted for a deal to take this country out of the EU.
We're not going to get a general election tonight. The Labour benches are empty. Jeremy Corbyn's MPs are abstaining. It is not going to reach the 434 threshold required under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act for a general election to be triggered. Therefore, all eyes now will turn to tomorrow. Plans from the Liberal Democrats and the SNP to introduce legislation, a one-line bill overriding the Fixed Term Parliaments Act. The government looks to be behind it. They'll probably turn it into a piece of government legislation. Jeremy Corbyn has been outflanked by the leaders of the SNP, Ian Blackford, and the Liberal Democrats, Joe Swinson. And it looks as if we will have a general election called by the end of this week, possibly taking place on either December the 9th or December the 12th. Jeremy Corbyn has been outfoxed.
Now, those two dates matter, don't they?
That he would never ask for an extension, and he said he'd rather die in a ditch. Another broken promise. Mr. Speaker, every promise this Prime Minister makes, he abandons. He said he would take us out of the European Union by the 31st.
Order, let's have some measure of decorum in the debate. The Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he said he would take us out of the European Union by the 31st of October, do or die. He spent £100 million, Mr. Speaker, £100 million on an advertising campaign to leave on the 31st of October, but failed to deliver.
Well, clearly no sign of an apology going to come from Boris Johnson. You can see, Theo, can't you, that the opposition parties will all play in a general election if it comes. Can you, between what Boris is putting tonight and what the Lib Dems and SNP may put tomorrow, this difference between the 9th and the 12th of December is actually quite important, isn't it?
It is important. It's important for a number of reasons. Firstly, under the Liberal Democrat SNP plan, Boris Johnson will not have the opportunity to bring back his withdrawal agreement implementation bill for MPs to vote upon in the House of Commons and to go through the House of Lords. So Boris Johnson, if it's December the 19th, if he House of Lords. So Boris Johnson, if it's December the 19th, if he accepts the SNP and the Lib Dem plan, then he will go into lost that election, having failed to deliver Brexit. And then it will be a question of whether the voters can trust him to return a Conservative majority in order to deliver Brexit. The calculation inside Number 10 is that voters are prepared to back Boris Johnson. That's why they've run this people versus the Parliament narrative now since the very beginning of September, even going back into Boris Johnson's campaign to be Conservative leader. But there is a nervous cabinet. There are nervous MPs who are saying Boris Johnson must bring back the legislation because it's much better to go into that general election having delivered Brexit. People like to buy or sell with.
So can he accept the Lib Dems terms and the SNP terms?
He may not have a choice if he wants an election this side of Christmas, because under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, it's not going, he's a port, it's impossible to reach that figure. Now, there does appear, and we've heard it in the Commons from Ian Blackford, the leader of the SNP, like the SNP are not going to support the legislation if the government take control of it and introduce it as their own bill. But the Liberal Democrats are, and now with all of those defections from the Conservatives and from the Labour Party, they have 20 MPs. And if you add the Liberal Democrats together with, let's say, half of the Conservative independents, the 21 who, of course, had the whip removed to them, together with the ERG, you will cross that magic threshold of 318, giving the Conservatives a majority of 3-4 in a vote with this legislation to pass it into law, and that would need to take place by Thursday night. Queen rubber stamps it Thursday night. Parliament dissolved Friday, election December the 9th.
We've said it before, Theo, but some big days coming up. Thank you very much indeed for that. But I just wonder, before we find out whether a general election is going to happen or not, we now know, because Boris Johnson has written a letter accepting the extension, do you think that actually Boris Johnson ought to apologise for telling us again and again and again that we would be leaving on the 31st of October? Let's just remind ourselves of Boris Johnson on the 31st of October theme.
We will, of course, be pushing our plan into action.
So we understand...
And getting ready to come out on October the 31st. 31st, correct.
Come what may.
Come what may.
Do or die.
Come what may. Do or die.
Can you make a promise today to the British public that you will not go back to Brussels and ask for another delay to Brexit?
Yes.
And... Sorry.
I can.
And would you rather...
I'd rather be dead in a ditch.
I will uphold the Constitution, I will obey the law, but we will come out on October the 31st.
Well, how, if the MPs have changed the law to stop you doing that?
We're going to come out on October the 31st.
But how?
And it's vital that people understand that the UK will not extend. We won't go on remaining in the EU beyond October the 30th. What on earth is the point?
But
do you know
how
how much
will you
it costs?
do that when
costs,
MPs have changed the law to stop you? Are you looking for a way round the law? Because that's what it sounds like.
We will obey the law, but we will come out, I should say, on October the 31st.
So to me, all well and good to say, we'll try and leave on the 31st, we'll do our damnedest, that's what I'm aiming for. But to go on saying we are leaving on the 31st of October, even when he knew it wasn't true, so that he could play a game of saying to the British public, it wasn't my fault, Gov, it was everybody else. I don't really think that's good enough. I think Boris Johnson should apologise for misleading us. That is my view. But if you think, no, Nigel, it's not his fault at all, call 0345 6060 973. If, like me, you think, even when he knew we weren't leaving, he still pretended we were, and that's wrong, text to 84850 and tell me, do you think he's going to win a general election campaigning for this so-called deal? Please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course you can watch us on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Let's go to Richard in Loughton. Richard, does Boris owe us an apology?
No. Because when you say that we're going to leave on the 31st of October, there's a subplot. It's implied that all things being equal, we're going to leave on the 31st of October. And I think an intelligent person would realise that, because we live in a democracy. So if you say we're going to leave on the 31st, then obviously it's subject to getting your deal through Parliament. That's the nature of democracy. But the other aspect is that you yourself, on several occasions, said we are leaving on the 31st of October. And one of those occasions was when I spoke to you to compare the D-Day with Brexit. And I said to you, you shouldn't make a holy cow of a date. It's more important that you get it right. So they intended to invade the continent on the 5th of June.
They
all
did.
Things being equal.
And the weather
but
wasn't
the weather
good.
didn't prove equal, so they had to put it off to the 6th. And they'd already put it off because of the Dieppe raid in 1942. Stalin wanted them to go in 1943. The Americans wanted to go in 1944. So that was life and death. Brexit, we've got to get a sense of proportion about Brexit. It's
Well,
more important
Richard,
to get
if I
it
said
right
if I
than
said
to
we're
get
leaving
the
on the
date.
if I said we're leaving on the 31st of October, perhaps I made the mistake of believing the Prime Minister. But here's my issue, Richard.
You're much too intelligent to be browbeaten by Boris Johnson, Mr. Farage.
In the last few days, when it's been obvious that we're not leaving on the 31st, he's continued with the narrative that we are leaving. That's the bit I really question.
I don't put it like that. I put it that it was an expression of hope. And all those, even Remainers who now feel that it is in the public interest for us to leave with a deal, we all hoped, and myself isn't included, that we would be leaving on the 31st of October with a deal. But it didn't happen. You know, this is the nature of life. Things don't always happen the way we want it to.
Can we,
I think
Richard,
it's an
when
arrogant
Boris...
argument to
When
start
Boris makes promises, can we
casting
believe
down.
him?
So does Jeremy Corbyn. So do all. In fact, there was a Francois Mitterrand, a French statement, said that the politician who doesn't make promises before they're elected is not a proper politician. But a politician who doesn't break promises after they're elected is not a statesman. Now, you might think that's very cynical,
Very
but
cynical.
it is a fact of life.
Well, Richard, I'm sorry. All well and good to be positive and upbeat, but when he absolutely knew there was no way we were leaving, he kept on the narrative. Surely he should apologise for that.
Well, let the public be the judge of his conduct. Let's have this election, and those that think that he lied and that he's not an honourable person will not vote for Boris Johnson. But that's not what the opinion polls appear to be showing at the moment.
No, Richard, he's made it clear today he wants to fight the election and he will defend that new EU treaty, and it's going to be very interesting to see whether the public say, yep, we believe you, or whether they cast out. Richard, thank you for your thoughts. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Holly Jones. Now debating Boris Johnson's motion to have a general election on the 12th of December. There'll be a division at about 6:45, a result at around about 7 o'clock. It's considered very unlikely that he will get the 434 votes he needs to have that election, but pretty likely that tomorrow there'll be a piece of legislation that overrides that and will get over 50% of MPs supporting it. It's not certain, but that's how it's looking. But I'm asking for now. I mean, you know, Adam says to me, I never believed Boris Johnson when he said he'd get us out on the 31st. Other people say to me, you know, has Boris actually signed a letter to Donald Tusk accepting this extension, or flex extension as they're calling it? And, you know, he did. Today, Boris Johnson has signed a letter himself as Prime Minister of the UK accepting an extension up until the 31st of January. At no point has he apologised. I rather think he ought to. Some think, no, he shouldn't apologise. It's not his fault. But I think it's quite important because this election will be fought. I can see it now from what Jeremy Corbyn's saying and the others are all saying. It's going to be fought very much on can you trust Boris Johnson when he says something. Sean is a new caller from Lingfield in Surrey. Sean, good evening.
Hi, how are you, Mr. Farage? You
Good
okay?
Evening. We're all right, yeah. We may well be heading by the end of this week for a general election. I don't know. We'll see. It looks likely. But is Boris believable when he says things like, we are leaving on the 31st of October, and yet we're not?
Well, look, there's 5 points I'd like to bring up, if I may.
Right.
The first thing is, okay, Boris said, look, I don't want to do this. I'd sooner put pins in my eyes, or whatever he said.
Yeah, well, the rest
and, you
of
know,
it, yeah.
we are leaving on the 31st of October. But then you've got Parliament, and Parliament is blocking every single move for all of us to leave the EU, as you well know. Now, I think that's a shame, for the simple reason being, if we are so-called living in a democracy, as your last caller, Richard, said, then we should have already have left the EU. Now, they're debating things like time. Okay, they've had 3 years plus to debate things about time, and yet they're still blocking every move for us to leave the EU, which I personally think is disgraceful, because people voted to leave. Now, whether you like it or not, that's a fact. Now, Boris, okay, he said, look, we're going to leave no matter what, but his hands are tied, because if he does say, look, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do that, he's going to end up in prison. And then probably some other MP will come in and say exactly the same thing, whether it be leave or remain, and they again will be held up to account by the MPs that are blocking every single move the government or the anti-government is trying to make.
I completely understand you about those who don't respect the result of the referendum trying to block it. But the point I'm making is this. Theresa May told us 108 recorded timings we are leaving on the 29th of March, and it didn't happen. We've now had Boris Johnson. So is Boris Johnson a liar too?
Well, no, Boris...
What's the difference then? What's the difference?
The difference is I think that Theresa May didn't really want us to leave.
Well, she said she did.
Whereas now we have a Prime Minister that actually does want us to leave.
But she said she did 108 times. Goodness knows how many times Boris has said we are leaving on the 31st of October. When you have two consecutive Prime Ministers make a promise on a date within the same year, doesn't there come a point when the public stop believing anything, Sean?
Oh, absolutely. And the public have stopped believing MPs many years ago, to be fair. I think the last time we all uproared, and I think a good thing to look at would be, say, question time. If you look back over those debates in question time, then, we didn't trust the MPs then, because all they did was bail banks out. They didn't bail the people out. They could have given every single person in this country £10,000, and it would have put the money back into the community, because we'd have all spent it. And it would have all gone back to the banks anyway. But no, they decided to bail the banks out. Now they're having this so-called debate. Now, I've been listening to Parliament for the last hour and a half on my iPhone on iPlayer, and they say they're having a debate about an election. Well, they're not, because 95% of the Labour MPs and everyone else that doesn't want an election on the 12th, they want it on the 9th for various reasons, which were brought up, I might add.
Because the students will all still be in their university cities.
They can still vote. They can vote by proxy, but there's all of these things going on that's trying to prevent something happening.
Right. So now, on balance, Sean,
surely.
Well, it does matter, actually. I mean, look, take somewhere like Canterbury, all right? Canterbury in Kent has always been a Conservative seat. It went Labour. Why? Because so many students who were there in Canterbury turned out on the day to vote. If on the 9th they're all still in Canterbury, but on the 12th they've all gone home, it does make a difference. That's the point, Sean.
Well, they can all vote via post.
Yeah, but they won't get round to it. They won't get round to it.
That's their problem. If they won't get round to it, that's their problem.
I understand that.
But there's something else as well that was brought up in Parliament. The SNP chap said we want 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. Well, no offence, but it's 18-year-olds only. And, if they had another referendum, there are 2 points I'd like to bring up. One is, if they have another referendum and they say that the people that were 16 weren't able to vote, well, how about the people that are now passed away that can no longer vote? They don't hold those, do they?
No, you can argue this all round the houses. But, Sean, on balance, do you think Boris Johnson has been straight with us, yes or no?
That's a very good question.
Got you there.
I think he's wanted to be straight with
Okay.
us.
Sean, I'm going to let you go and go to the House of Commons and hear the Father of the House, Ken Clarke.
Rescue Ulster from this absurd position which is proposed, putting these barriers between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom.
Of course, the member will know that it's only half of the answer, because we're still left
Sammy Wilson,
under this agreement within the rules of the single market, still subject to the European Court of Justice making adjudication about whether or not we have adhered to those rules, and still subject to the EU being able to deny.
Well, this debate that's going on here is very much about what Ken Clarke and Sammy Wilson are arguing is, what does the deal, as Boris calls it, or the EU treaty, as I prefer to call it, what does it actually mean? And, of course, the point Sammy Wilson's making is we will still be under the auspices of the ECJ to a greater or lesser extent if Boris's deal goes through. And that's a debate I guess we're going to have if this general election gets called, because Boris Johnson today has made it clear, to my immense disappointment, that he will fight the general election on the basis of what he agreed in Brussels 2 weeks ago. And I'm disappointed because to me it just isn't Brexit. Robin is calling from Market Harborough in Leicestershire. Robin, good evening to you.
Good evening, Nigel. Yes, he should apologise, because even by their own measure, they should have left on June 24, 2018. That was a date I had in my diary. I mean, I've been anti-common market since I was 18 in 1972. So there are other issues which could hit the Tories, actually, because there's...
Well, Robin, just one sec, Robin. Date the previous date that mattered, I think, was March 29th, wasn't it? March 29th was built up in our minds because that was exactly 2 years after Article 50 had been passed in the House of Commons. So we have now had, in one calendar year, a Conservative Prime Minister telling us we're leaving on March the 29th. We didn't. Another Conservative Prime Minister telling us we're leaving on October the 31st. Halloween trick-or-treaty, and we're not. And I just wonder whether, at some point, the public don't stop believing literally everything they're told.
Well, I hope so, because I hope to stand as an independent, and so it will help me, like it helped me in the local elections. I beat the Labour candidate. So I think people are willing to vote for anybody apart from the three main parties.
All right, and, so you're limbering up for an election there, Robin, are you?
I am. It could be my fifth general election and probably my last, but I think they could punish, because they punished Ted Heath when he had a winter election. Mm-hmm. That was 3-day weeks and everything. That was long before you were in politics. But also there's various other things, like I was trying to say, like Google and Amazon not paying the full whack. That's very unpopular, and our high streets are dying.
Robin, these are all issues that will come out during the campaign. Robin, thank you for your call. On YouTube, Anthony says, stop bashing Boris. There's nothing he can do with the parliamentary numbers. No, Anthony, I know, which is why I found it so bizarre for the last couple of weeks that Boris has continued to tell us something that he knew wasn't true. Somebody else on YouTube disagrees, anonymous. Boris has been straight with us. Parliament changed the law. Yes, and even after they changed the law, the Prime Minister kept telling us we were leaving on the 31st of October when it was obvious that we just simply were not going to do anything. Andrew on Facebook says Boris does not owe us an apology. Parliament does. Sadly, we won't be leaving the EU ever, is Andrew's view. And Barry says we should already have left. Why are we going on? It sounds like 5-year-olds arguing with each other. Nigel, no, Boris shouldn't apologise. He did his best to get us out. He's been prevented by Parliament. He didn't ask for an extension. Parliament did. Well, he did, didn't he, actually? I don't blame him at all. We need a change of personnel in Parliament. Only an election can deliver that. Linda in Mansfield, I agree. We need a change of personnel in Parliament. I couldn't agree more with that. I think my disappointment tonight is that Boris intends to fight the election, he says, on the basis of that new EU treaty, which I regard as not being Brexit, but that's a separate debate and one we'll have over the course of the next few weeks. But for now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:30 in time for the news. We're asking, should Boris Johnson apologise for the fact that we are not leaving? Let's get it into our heads. We are not leaving this Thursday, the 31st of October, despite him telling us that we were up until a couple of days ago. But before I get back to that and your calls and your thoughts on it, really extraordinary revelation. There is a book being written by Sir Anthony Seldon. It's about Theresa May. It's called May at Number 10. It's being serialised in the Times, and an extraordinary revelation overnight from Nick Timothy, who was her closest aide. And he says that he was the first person to call her after the result of the referendum when Leave had won. And he said she cried. She cried out of sadness, saying the ones who voted Brexit will be the ones who suffer the most. And from that moment on, Nick Timothy says, Brexit for her was about damage limitation, not about a positive opportunity. And yet, she told us again, do you remember the speeches? Brexit means Brexit, and we're leaving on March the 29th, and painting herself out in a general election in 2017 as being a champion of the Brexit vote, when actually what she did, Actually, what she did was to become leader of the Conservative Party, because that was all that really mattered. Not Brexit, not the country, but her becoming Prime Minister, and then effectively betray the Leave result with a new EU treaty, which mercifully got voted down 3 times by Parliament. And I guess one of the big debates over the next few weeks will be just how different is Boris Johnson's deal from the one that Mrs May got rejected. Does Boris owe us an apology, or is it all Parliament's fault? That really is my question tonight for you. On Twitter, I get, what a surprise. We can now see where it all went wrong. Theresa May was distraught after the vote. Linda, I agree with you. I think it says an awful lot. How does Jacob Rees-Mogg defend this awful deal? He was the Tories' most prominent leaver. He's now excusing us. He's now excusing a non-Brexit. Alan, I never fail to be amazed, ever since the Maastricht Treaty, how the Conservative Party in the end, and individuals within it, will ultimately put the tribe of the Conservative Party above what they think. That's my view. If you think I'm wrong, you tell me why on 0345 6060 973. Let's go to King's Lynn and speak to Anita. Anita, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I think he ought to apologise.
Uh-huh.
And I think he needs to apologise for this appalling treaty he's putting forward to the country.
But he says Anita, he says it gets Brexit done.
It does not get Brexit done. It ties our fishermen. King's Lynn is down the road from some enormous big fishing industries.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been affected terribly by this EU treaty. And they will continue to be so.
But Boris, Anita,
it's a sellout. It's a sellout.
Anita, Boris Johnson 2 weeks ago, in the House of Commons, was asked by Owen Paterson, Shropshire Conservative MP.
I watched that live on TV.
And he said, just for those that don't know, Anita,
yes,
when he was asked the question, Boris Johnson said 100% we will be getting back control of our fishing waters.
No. He lied on camera and he's lying to the public. The fishing waters, what he meant was, we will get back a bigger quota of our fishing. We will not get back all our waters. We will get back a bigger quota.
Yeah.
Now, at the moment, maybe we get 10% of the quota. Oh, we might give them 15% now. That is not going to help our fishermen. That's not going to help the fishermen up in Scotland, nor the ones down here in Norfolk.
All right. Anita, tell me, were you predisposed to wanting to like Boris Johnson as Prime Minister?
I'm a Conservative.
Right, okay.
I have voted Conservative all my life.
Right.
I pay my membership. Okay. I will be cancelling it as soon as they announce they are fighting this election based on this treaty. I will cancel my membership and I will be paying you my membership and hope you put a candidate in West Norfolk where 66% people voted to leave.
Well, Anita, it's very interesting because I think one of the reasons Boris wanted a Saturday sitting of Parliament for the first time in 37 years was to bounce people into supporting this without having seen it. Clearly you have. Anita, thank you. Very interesting. And for those that doubt Anita or believe in the Prime Minister, I refer you to Clause 72 of the political declaration, which sets out the future terms for fishing in this country. It is less than satisfactory. I would suggest to people that the Prime Minister wasn't exactly fulsome with the truth when he answered it the other day. John is a new caller from Enfield. Good evening, John.
Evening.
Good evening. So, is the Prime Minister, is he telling us the truth when he says again and again and again, we're leaving on the 31st of October, but now we're not?
Well, I think it's been fairly clear all along that he isn't telling the truth because that's something that he is more or less incapable of doing. But I would also say that it is more or less impossible for him to get any kind of deal through. And now what I would be more interested in knowing is what if the Brexit Party, which is obviously standing in an election that would be coming up soon, if there were to be one, what would be your position in this case?
Well, I did not spend 25 years of my life fighting against the EU treaties and wanting to leave them to sign up to a new one, John. I was utterly appalled. Just one sec. I was utterly appalled by what Mrs May negotiated. Utterly appalled. And I feel that what Boris has done is slightly better in terms of commitments to the customs union, but far worse in terms of the integrity of the United Kingdom. So I mean, to me, John, a general election gives Boris the opportunity of dropping that treaty and going for a fresh approach.
Okay, so regardless of the difference between a treaty and a deal, I'm not exactly sure on the semantics there. But
well, it's just that
what kind of deal would you be seeking?
It's just that it's binding in international law, and it's very, very tough to get out of treaties, as we've seen already. Look, John...
But any deal would be binding international law. There's no way a deal would not be binding international law under some kind of agreement. For example, CETA with China...
But when you're signed up to... We said we were leaving the European Court of Justice's jurisdiction. Under this, we don't leave it. That's the point. Leaving means leaving the institutions of the European Union.
Yes, but, I mean, for example, say we made a deal with Canada, similar to the CETA currently. So that has an independent dispute settlement tribunal.
Yes, it does.
Members.
Yes, it does.
Yes, we would still be bound to such international courts.
John, I get that point entirely. However, what we've signed up to in the political declaration is a commitment that if ultimately we get this so-called free trade deal with the EU, the disputes mechanism will ultimately go to the European Court of Justice, who will make a binding ruling. So we are committing ourselves for all time, or for the foreseeable future, to having the European Court of Justice deciding these things as opposed to international arbitration. My point, John, is that leaving means you leave the institutions of the European Union, and to me, Boris isn't offering that.
Yes, so if we leave, for example, going back to the previous caller, fisheries, a subject close to your heart, obviously. 0.1% of the UK economy.
Oh, well, let's just write them off then, shall we?
Most of the UK fisheries have been sold. The quotas have been domestically sold by the UK government, not the EU government, by the UK government domestically to foreign companies, which present
Mrs. Thatcher.
Mrs. Thatcher of the quotas.
Mrs. Thatcher tried to stop this.
Environmentally unfriendly fishing ships are forcing out the small British ships. This isn't a decision of the EU. The UK has made that decision domestically to sell those quotas for biggest profit to the biggest companies.
John, if you want to talk fisheries, Mrs. Thatcher tried with the Merchant Shipping Act of 1988 to stop this from happening, but was overruled. It was called the famous Factor Tame case, and we've known ever since then that EU law is superior to our own. John, back to the question. Do you think Boris Johnson was being straight with Parliament, yes or no?
Well, of course he wasn't. My question is, could he do better?
Well, my question is, why did he say we're leaving when he knew in the last couple of weeks that we weren't? John, I'm going to move on and go to Simon in Basingstoke. Simon, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I'd just like to say I think the fisheries issue is an important one, but I think it's more important that our politicians deliver what they promise, and I think Boris has singularly failed to do that.
So, when Stuart says to me on Facebook, Boris promised, no ifs, no buts, and failed, that warrants an apology no matter what the reason. Would you agree with Stuart?
I would agree with that, but I think it's still not too late. We have a division of powers within our state, and the executive does have the capability, if it wishes, to effectively, under the 2004 Civil Contingencies Act, effectively, if Boris wanted to, he could say, OK, Parliament's refusing to have an election, it's not voting through the deal, I'm going to enact this piece of legislation, I'm going to take us out on no deal, unless you give me an election. Okay. And that's what Boris should have done, and he didn't do it. No. Because Boris didn't want to.
No, well, Simon, there are lots of questions. Simon, thank you. And the House of Commons is now dividing for this vote on the government proposal to have a general election on the 12th of December. The government needs 434 votes under the terms of the Fixed Parliament Act. We're expecting the result somewhere near the top of the hour, but for now, you listen to the Nigel Farage Show. It's 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Holly Jones. The House of Commons is dividing over Boris Johnson's proposal to hold a general election on the 12th of December, and a result may not be too far away, because I understand quite a lot of people are abstaining. Is that right, Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor?
It is right. Very few Labour MPs in the House of Commons this afternoon for the vote under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act for a general election on December the 12th. And of course, Boris Johnson has pledged to bring back his Brexit legislation if MPs vote for it in enough numbers, the magic number 434, a two-thirds majority of the House of Commons. But we are not going to get to that point. There is no way the government can obtain that amount of support without Jeremy Corbyn whipping his MPs to support a vote. And because Labour were anticipating the vote today, many MPs have been given the day off to remain in their constituencies. They're not down in London, but now Labour, fearing that they're being outflanked by the Liberal Democrats and the SNP with a one-line bill, which of course just requires a simple majority of one, legislation on that coming tomorrow. And it's likely that now Labour are going to support that legislation because they do not want to be seen to be preventing a general election from happening.
But the compromise from Boris Johnson, of course, would be that we can't debate his deal before the election.
It would be. Now, the other aspect to this is the date, and that's where the haggling is taking place. A lot of it in the corridors, some of it in number 10, over the date. The other aspect to this, of course, is the Liberal Democrats don't want the legislation to come back before the House of Commons because it's very difficult to have a policy to revoke Article 50 if we've left the European Union with a deal. Their policy, their central plank would be shot.
Would be defunct, yeah.
It would be defunct. The other thing is, of course, the student holidays. December the 9th, which is the date being proposed by the Lib Dems, is just about enough time for students staying in their university towns and cities to go out and support their MPs where they are registered. December the 12th is well into the holidays.
There's some confusion over this, though, isn't there? There's some confusion over this.
There is, but at the moment, quite intense negotiations are taking place. The Tories are pushing for that December the 12th date. But this legislation isn't going to be straightforward, Nigel.
No,
the SNP saying that they wouldn't support a government bill if it wanted to introduce legislation. Ian Blackford, the leader of the SNP in Westminster, also said he would support votes for 16 and 17-year-olds in the House of Commons just a few moments ago, raising the possibility that the SNP are going to try and amend the legislation. So although the vote tonight is going to fail, Boris Johnson, we understand, is going to be pushing for a general election. It is by no means safe.
No, absolutely. Theo, stay with us, and everyone else, stay with us. We'll get the result. It won't be too long. You'll hear it live on LBC. Back to Boris Johnson. Should he apologise for the fact we're not leaving on the 31st of October when he told us so many times we were? That's the question I'm asking you. And Dawn is a new caller from Neath in South Wales. Good evening, Dawn.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. First of all, I was trying to ring you Friday when you said that your viewing audience have gone up on LBC. I find LBC is the People's Parliament. Whether you wanted to leave, remain, a deal, no deal, you listen to people. Our MPs are not listening anymore.
Dawn, do you know what?
LBC
I think
is taking everybody's point of view in.
I think you're right.
How many more extensions is he going to ask for? How long is this going to go on? I just don't understand it. They're bringing all the old Prime Ministers back out of the crypt to tell us all to stay in the EU. Yep. Well, let me tell you, I've heard a lot over the last few years. I never knew much about politics. I personally made a big mistake. I voted to remain. And by God, am I sorry I voted to remain. I want to just get out and leave, especially after what Donald Tusk said, that those who voted to leave, there's a special place in hell for them. Does that say any member of my family that wanted to wanted to leave should go to hell?
Well, Dawn,
I just don't understand this.
Dawn,
I think it's time to say enough is enough. And when are we going to put great back into Britain?
Dawn, how much, in terms of you changing your position, how much has the behaviour of people like Donald Tusk been a factor?
Oh, terribly. And again, with Angela Merkel, when she said we wouldn't be cherry picking. Well, that's fine, because people of Wales always pick blackberries. We survived. We were a country that can survive. And I know England, Scotland and Ireland, we will all of us survive. We just got into this situation. None of us knew what we were involved in with the EU. But now we've all woke up. We've been like Sleeping Beauty. And we woke up and we're seeing what's going on. And do you know what? Enough is enough. When Boris says he wants to keep no deal on the table, well, yeah, keep it on the table. But let's get out without any dealing as well. Let's keep the no deal and walk away.
Dawn, you sound very, very passionate about this.
I am very passionate. You know, I've heard people on your programme talking to you. I had a grandfather who fought in the First World War. My great-grandfather, 42, he went into fight in the First World War. And then on my mother's side, I got a grandfather buried in France. He died there. They talk about people that fought in this country. We've all gone through it with our history. But we never, ever thought that our lives would be so entwined with these countries. We always thought we had our independence. And now we're finding out we're not independent at all. We're in chains. You know, people now are asking for freedom. That's what they're asking for.
Dawn, I have to say, great call. Thank you. And thank you for calling into LBC, and thank you. And actually, Dawn's point, everybody. I do actually think LBC is an incredibly democratic place where you can put any point of view, and you know my views on these things. I'm perfectly happy to take on all different points of view, and hopefully we can generally do it in a pretty civilised way. Back to Theo Ashwood. Theo, how close are we to a result?
We're waiting. Good evening, Nigel. We're waiting the votes in the next few moments. The tellers are starting to gather in front of the Speaker's chair. Remember, in terms of the numbers being read out, we're listening out for the number of 434. Yep. Very unlikely to get anywhere close to that. We're probably going to land somewhere around 330, 340, I would imagine, probably even a bit less, and then there will be the abstention. So a very low number opposing a general election, if any, at all. But of course, the Speaker, John Bercow, will then just simply announce that it's failed to meet the required amount, and the vote then falls. But listen out for Boris Johnson to see whether he raises a point of order immediately following the vote, setting out what the government's going to do next, exactly whether those negotiations with the Liberal Democrats have actually proved to be fruitful. An agreement has been reached, perhaps on, we're not quite clear yet, we know the negotiations are taking place on a one-line bill to override the Fixed Term Parliaments Act and bring forward a general election. Now, of course, there's been a lot of haggling about the date. The government, Tories want December the 12th, Liberal Democrats are saying December the 9th. And then also listen out for Jeremy Corbyn's response from the dispatch box if he raises a point of order and says whether Labour are going to actually, in fact, support that legislation.
So some big clues will come. We're going to get this result very, very shortly. Some big clues afterwards. I'm guessing some pretty intensive negotiations overnight. Boris Johnson would much rather fight a general election with his Brexit deal having passed into law. Looks like he may have to accept fighting it before it has. We'll find out very, very soon. Stay with LBC for the results. I'll be back tomorrow at 6, but let's hand over for the results live to Ian Dale.